Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching the massive alien ship drift closer to Earth's orbital facility. The vessel was unlike anything humans had ever built. It stretched for miles, its surface covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. After 3 days of careful approach, the aliens were finally ready to make contact. Jake had been chosen to represent humanity in this first official meeting. He was a career military officer, 45 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the outer colonies for 20 years, dealing with pirates and corporate conflicts. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The alien delegation arrived in a smaller craft that docked with the station. Jake waited in the main conference room with his team of advisors. Dr. Amy Foster sat to his right, the best xenobiologist Earth had to offer. General Lisa Parker represented the military perspective, while diplomat Kevin Walsh handled the political aspects. The conference room doors opened, and the aliens entered. Jake tried not to show his surprise at their appearance. The leader was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. Light seemed to move through its body in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Behind it came other creatures from different species. One looked like a giant insect with multiple arms. Another was covered in scales and walked on 4 legs. The last one seemed to be made of water held in a transparent container. The crystal being spoke first. Its voice came from a translation device that hung around what might have been its neck. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Republic. I speak for the Galactic Council, representing 12 advanced civilizations. We come in peace to welcome humanity to the greater galaxy. Jake nodded politely. I'm Captain Jake Morrison, representing Earth and all human colonies. We're honored by your visit. Veltar seemed pleased by this response. We have observed your species for some time. Humans show great promise, though you are still young in galactic terms. The Council has decided to offer you membership in our alliance. Dr. Foster leaned forward with interest. The Council had been mentioned in the few alien transmissions humans had intercepted over the years, but they knew little about it. What would membership involve? Jake asked. Veltar gestured to the insect-like creature. This is Trade Minister Klicknar of the Hive Collective. He will explain the benefits. The insect clicked its mandibles before speaking. Humans would gain access to fusion technology that could power your worlds for thousands of years. Medical advances that would extend your lifespans by centuries. Terraforming knowledge to make dead planets suitable for life. Trade routes that span the galaxy. The water being spoke next. I am Admiral Flux of the Aquatic Federation. We offer protection from hostile species and guidance in developing your military capabilities. General Parker raised an eyebrow at this. What kind of hostile species? The galaxy is dangerous, Veltar explained. Pirates, rogue artificial intelligences, species that have turned to violence. The Council maintains peace through strength. As members, you would be protected. Jake studied the aliens carefully. Everything they said sounded reasonable, even generous. But something felt wrong about the whole situation. The way they spoke about humans reminded him of adults talking to children. What would be expected of us in return? He asked. Veltar's crystal body flickered. Very little. You would contribute ships and personnel to Council defense forces, participate in trade agreements, follow Council guidelines for expansion and development. Kevin Walsh spoke up. Could we see the actual terms of membership? The scaled creature, who hadn't spoken yet, produced a device that projected writing in the air. The text was in multiple languages, including English. Jake began reading, and his expression grew darker with each line. The document was hundreds of pages long, filled with legal language that was hard to understand. But the basic meaning was clear. Humans would give up control of their military. All major decisions would need Council approval. Human population growth would be limited. Earth would be subject to regular inspections. Most insulting was Section 47B, which classified humans as a developing species requiring guidance and oversight for a minimum period of 500 standard years. Jake looked up from the document. This isn't membership, this is surrender. Veltar's crystal form flickered more rapidly. I don't understand. The terms are very generous. No species has ever been offered such favorable conditions for joining the Council. Favorable? General Parker's voice was sharp. You want us to give up our independence, limit our growth, and accept permanent second-class status. Not second class, the water being protested. Junior partners. It's a common classification for newly contacted species. Dr. Foster had been quiet through most of the discussion, but now she looked up from her tablet. How many species have you contacted before us? Thousands, Veltar said proudly. The Council has brought peace and prosperity to the galaxy for over a millennium. And how many of those species refused to join? Jake asked. The silence that followed was telling. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that were hard to read on their alien faces. None, Veltar finally admitted. All species recognize the benefits of Council membership. Jake stood up slowly. The aliens watched him with what might have been confusion. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Earth hung below them, blue and beautiful and free. We appreciate the offer, he said finally. But humanity will have to decline. The word decline seemed to break something in the aliens. They began speaking rapidly in their own languages, their translation devices struggling to keep up. Veltar's crystal body was now flashing so rapidly it was hard to look at. I don't think you understand, Veltar said. This is membership in the Galactic Council, the greatest honor that can be offered to a species. I understand perfectly, Jake replied, and our answer is no. Admiral Flux surged forward in its container. You would refuse protection? Refuse technology that could transform your civilization? We would refuse to trade our freedom for your gifts, General Parker said firmly. Trade Minister Klicknar clicked its mandibles angrily. This is unprecedented. Humans are making a terrible mistake. Jake turned back to face the delegation. Maybe, but it's our mistake to make. The meeting continued for another hour, with the aliens offering increasingly desperate incentives. They promised better terms, special exceptions, anything to change the human response. But Jake and his team remained firm. Finally, Veltar gathered his delegation. We will return to the Council and report your decision. Perhaps when you've had time to consider, you will reconsider. Perhaps, Jake said, but I doubt it. After the aliens left, Jake remained at the window. Dr. Foster joined him. Do you think we made the right choice? She asked. Jake was quiet for a long time. I think we made the only choice we could live with. The question is whether they'll let us live with it. In the distance, the massive alien ship was already moving away from Earth. But Jake had the feeling this wasn't the end of their problems. It was just the beginning. 6 months had passed since the aliens left Earth orbit. At first, nothing seemed to change. Human ships continued trading with alien merchants. The colonies kept growing. Life went on as normal. But General Lisa Parker noticed the small things. First, trade routes that used to include human colonies were suddenly redirected. Alien merchants who once welcomed human goods began finding excuses to refuse deals. Mining equipment on frontier worlds started breaking down more often than usual. Lisa sat in the Pentagon briefing room with President Kevin Walsh and other military leaders. The room was filled with charts and reports showing the pattern of problems across human space. It's not random, Lisa explained, pointing to a star map. Every incident follows the same pattern. Essential systems fail, alien technicians offer to help, but only if we agree to Council oversight. President Walsh rubbed his temples. The stress of the past month showed on his face. Any direct threats? Not yet, Lisa replied. But 3 of our exploration ships have been stopped by alien warships in the past week. They claim it's for safety inspections, but the message is clear. Colonel Ryan Hayes, head of Special Operations, spoke up from the back of the room. My teams report unusual alien activity near our borders. Ships that don't match any known configuration. They're watching us. Dr. Amy Foster entered the room carrying a thick folder. She looked tired but determined. I've finished analyzing the data from our first contact. There's something the Council didn't tell us. She activated a holographic display showing different alien species. Every Council member species shares common traits. They're either hive minds, pack animals, or collective consciousness beings. Individual thought is foreign to them. What does that mean for us? President Walsh asked. It means they literally cannot understand why we refused their offer, Amy explained. To them, joining a stronger group is natural survival instinct. Our independence doesn't make sense to their psychology. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent message from the outer colonies. The Titan colony, humanity's most successful settlement, beyond Earth, was under blockade. Captain Sue Barnes commanded the colony's small defense force. Her voice came through the communication system, filled with anger and determination. 20 council ships appeared 6 hours ago. They're not letting anyone in or out. They claim it's a safety inspection. President Walsh leaned forward. What are your orders, Captain? Mayor Pete Johnson has declared we won't surrender. The colonists are behind him completely. But sir, we only have 4 patrol ships. They have cruisers. Lisa Parker stood up. Captain Barnes, are your hidden defenses operational? There was a pause before Sue replied. Yes, General, all systems are ready. President Walsh looked confused. Hidden defenses? Lisa smiled grimly. Jake Morrison suggested we prepare for this possibility. We've been installing secret defense systems on all major colonies for the past year. The communication crackled as Sue reported new activity. The alien ships are moving closer. They're demanding we allow inspection teams aboard the colony. Mayor Pete Johnson's voice joined the conversation. This is my colony. These are my people. We didn't ask for their protection, and we don't need their inspection. Mayor Johnson, President Walsh said carefully, you don't have to do this. We can negotiate. With respect, Mr. President, there's nothing to negotiate. They want to turn us into pets. Some things are worth fighting for. The tension broke when the council ships opened fire on the colony's outer defenses. But instead of an easy victory, the aliens found themselves facing resistance they hadn't expected. Hidden weapon platforms emerged from asteroid fields around Titan. Stealth mines that had been drifting silently in space suddenly activated. Point. Defense systems that shouldn't exist began shooting down alien fighters. Sue Barnes reported the battle as it happened. 2 alien cruisers are disabled. Their fighters are pulling back. They weren't expecting this level of defense. The fighting continued for hours. When it ended, the alien blockade was broken, but both sides had taken losses. The council ships withdrew to a safe distance, but they didn't leave the system. That evening, Ambassador Veltar contacted President Walsh directly. The alien's crystal body flickered with patterns that Dr. Foster had learned to recognize as stress and confusion. President Walsh, this violence was unnecessary. We only wanted to ensure the colony's safety. By blockading it? Walsh replied coldly. By demanding surrender? By offering guidance, Veltar insisted. Your species is making dangerous mistakes. You need our wisdom. What we need is to be left alone. Veltar's form brightened. That is impossible. The galaxy is too dangerous for isolated species. Join the council and this conflict ends. The conflict ends when you stop trying to control us. We are not trying to control you. We are trying to save you. President Walsh stood up from his desk. From what? From yourselves, from your own primitive instincts, from the chaos that comes from unguided development. And if we refuse? Veltar was quiet for a long moment. Then you will learn why no species has ever refused council membership for long. The transmission ended, leaving Walsh alone with his thoughts. Within hours, reports came in from across human space. More blockades were forming. Trade stopped completely. Alien patrols began boarding human ships for inspections. But the aliens made a crucial mistake. They assumed humans would react like other species they had encountered. They expected fear, then negotiation, then surrender. Instead, they got Jake. Morrison, the former captain now promoted to admiral, had spent the months since first contact preparing for exactly this situation. His ships had been training in secret. His intelligence officers had been gathering information. His engineers had been reverse engineering every piece of alien technology they could find. Jake addressed the fleet from his flagship, the Earth's Pride. They think we'll fold under pressure. They think we'll trade our freedom for their scraps. They're about to learn what happens when you back humans into a corner. The first human strike came at dawn, Earth time. While Council forces focused on their blockades, human stealth ships struck at their supply lines. Alien cargo vessels found themselves under attack by ships that shouldn't exist. Admiral Kate Phillips led the assault on the alien base in the Proxima system. Her ships used new weapons based on captured alien technology but improved by human engineering. The base's defenses crumbled in minutes. The message sent across Council space was simple. Humans didn't just know how to say no. They knew how to fight. But the real shock came when intercepted Council communications revealed the truth. Dr. Foster's research team had been right. The Council wasn't a benevolent alliance. It was a protection racket that had destroyed dozens of species over the centuries. Jake Morrison reviewed the intelligence reports in his quarters. The evidence was overwhelming. Every species that had refused Council membership had eventually been conquered or eliminated. The Council had been offering humanity the choice between slavery and extinction. But they had made one critical error. They had given humans time to prepare. And humans, Jake knew, were very good at preparing for war. He opened a communication channel to President Walsh. "Mr. President, we've learned what we're really fighting. This isn't about membership or trade or protection. This is about survival." "What do you recommend, Admiral?" Jake looked out at the stars where human ships were gathering for what would come next. "We show them what humans do when someone tries to cage us." The war for humanity's freedom was about to begin. Intelligence Officer Zakron sat in his office deep inside the Council's military headquarters. The reptilian being stared at the reports covering his desk with growing horror. For 3 days, he had been compiling information about the human threat for the Council leaders. What he had discovered would change everything. Zakron had served the Council for 40 years. He had helped plan the conquest of 17 different species. He thought he understood how these operations worked. A species would refuse membership. The Council would apply pressure, resistance would crumble, and another world would join their empire. But humans were different. The report in front of him detailed 2 years of human activity that the Council had completely missed. While Ambassador Veltar had been focused on diplomatic meetings and trade negotiations, humans had been running the most sophisticated intelligence operation in galactic history. Every human diplomat had been a spy. Every trade mission had been gathering military data. Every cultural exchange had been mapping Council defenses. The humans hadn't just been learning about alien technology. They had been stealing it, improving it, and turning it into weapons. Zakron's clawed hands shook as he read Colonel Ryan Hayes' file. The human Special Forces officer had spent 2 years moving through Council space using forged alien identities. His team had infiltrated military bases, copied communication codes, and mapped every major installation in 12 star systems. But that wasn't the worst part. The humans had discovered the Council's greatest secret. Hidden in classified archives that should have been impossible to access, Ryan's team had found records of the Council's true history. The evidence was overwhelming and terrible. The Galactic Council wasn't a peaceful alliance. It was a 1,000-year-old empire built on conquest and genocide. The member species weren't partners. They were the survivors who had surrendered fast enough to avoid extinction. Zakron had been part of the system for so long that he had forgotten how it really worked. Species that refused to join faced economic warfare, then military intervention, then complete destruction. In the past century alone, the Council had wiped out 14 independent civilizations. The classified files contained detailed records of each campaign. The Kalari had been peaceful traders who wanted to remain neutral. Their homeworld was now a radioactive wasteland. The Nith Confederation had tried to form their own alliance. Every member species was extinct. The Void Swimmers had possessed technology that interested the Council. They had been enslaved and worked to death in Council laboratories. But humans had learned all of this. And unlike previous species, they had used the information to prepare. Dr. Amy Foster's research had revealed why the Council's usual methods wouldn't work on humans. Every other species they had conquered shared similar psychology. They were either hive minds that valued collective survival over individual freedom, or pack animals that naturally accepted hierarchy and dominance. Humans were chaos incarnate. They competed with each other constantly, which drove rapid innovation. They refused to accept authority without proof of its worth. Most importantly, they actually became more dangerous when threatened. Zakron's communicator chimed. Supreme Chancellor Mordak wanted an immediate briefing on human military capabilities. The reptilian officer gathered his files and walked to the council chamber with heavy steps. The chamber was filled with the leadership of 12 species. Chancellor Mordak, an ethereal being of pure energy, floated at the center. Around him sat the military commanders and political leaders who controlled half the galaxy. Report, Mordak commanded. Zakron activated his holographic display. The human threat is far greater than we estimated. They have been preparing for war since first contact. Ambassador Veltar's crystal form flickered with annoyance. Impossible. They are a single species with limited technology. No, Zakron replied. They are a single species that has reverse-engineered and improved technology from all of our member races. The display showed images of human ships that shouldn't exist, fighters that used Zephyrian crystal power sources, cruisers with Vorthan energy shields, weapons that combined the best features of Council military technology with human innovations. Where did they get this technology? Demanded General Thok of the Brutish Empire. From us, Zakron admitted. Every trade negotiation, every diplomatic meeting, every interaction was an intelligence operation. We gave them everything they needed to know. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Species that had barely spoken to each other in centuries began arguing about blame and responsibility. But Chancellor Mordak raised a glowing hand for silence. How much do they know about our true nature? Zakron hesitated. This was the part he dreaded most. Everything. They have accessed classified archives dating back 800 years. They know about the conquered species, the genocides, the real purpose of Council membership. The silence that followed was deafening. Admiral Flux of the Aquatic Federation spoke first. Then they know they face extinction if they lose. Yes, Zakron confirmed. And humans apparently become extremely dangerous when facing extinction. The display showed the results of the Titan colony battle. Council ships that had been disabled by weapons that shouldn't exist, defense systems that had appeared from nowhere, human tactics that no other species had ever used. They fight like nothing we've encountered before, Zakron continued. Other species try to minimize casualties and preserve their forces. Humans seem willing to sacrifice everything to win. Chancellor Mordak pulsed with frustrated energy. Recommendations? Immediate overwhelming force, suggested General Thok. Crush them before they can fully prepare. But Trade Minister Klicknar of the Hive Collective was studying the intelligence reports more carefully. Look at their resource allocation. They're not just preparing to defend their worlds, they're preparing to attack ours. The truth of this statement became clear as Zakron revealed the final part of his report. Human ships had been spotted throughout, Council space hidden in asteroid fields and nebulae. Not dozens of ships, hundreds. While we were blockading their colonies, Zakron explained, they were positioning strike forces near every major Council installation. If we attack their homeworld, they can attack ours. Admiral Kate Phillips had proven this during her assault on the Proxima base. Human forces had struck without warning, using tactics that combined multiple alien technologies in ways their original creators had never imagined. Ambassador Veltar's crystal form was now flickering rapidly, with what the other species had learned to recognize as fear. This is unprecedented. No species has ever dared threaten Council worlds directly. Because no other species knew what we really are, Chancellor Mordak replied grimly. They all believed our propaganda about peaceful alliance and mutual benefit. Dr. Foster's intercepted. Communications had revealed the scope of human preparation. They hadn't just been building weapons. They had been studying every species the Council had conquered, learning from their mistakes and preparing for a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The meeting was interrupted by urgent reports from across Council space. Human ships were attacking supply convoys. Military communications were being jammed. Entire star systems were going dark. But the most chilling report came from the frontier regions. Species that had been conquered centuries ago were beginning to rebel. The humans had somehow made contact with resistance groups that the Council thought had been eliminated. Zakron looked at his superiors with reptilian eyes that reflected 1,000 years of galactic domination coming to an end. Chancellor, I believe we may have made a critical error, which is, we assumed humans would react like prey animals when cornered. Instead, they've reacted like predators who found new hunting grounds. The Council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For a millennium, they had been the galaxy's apex predators. Now they faced something they had never encountered before, a species that refused to be prey. The Council emergency session had been going for 6 hours. Representatives from 12 species argued in languages that their translators struggled to convert. Fear filled the chamber like a toxic gas. Supreme Chancellor Mordak floated at the center of the chaos, his energy form pulsing with frustration. News kept arriving from across the galaxy. Human attacks on supply lines, rebellions on conquered worlds, communication networks failing. Ambassador Veltar's crystal body was cracked from stress. We must respond with overwhelming force. Send the entire Council fleet to Earth. End this threat before it spreads. But Intelligence Officer Zakron had more bad news. Chancellor, our fleets are already committed. We have rebellions on 47 worlds. The humans have somehow contacted resistance groups we thought were eliminated centuries ago. General Thok slammed his massive fist on the table. How is this possible? We crushed those rebellions completely. We killed the leaders, Zakron explained. But humans seem to understand that ideas can't be killed. They've been spreading information about our true history. Species that accepted conquest are remembering what freedom felt like. The chamber's communication system activated. President Kevin Walsh's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him stood Admiral Jake Morrison and Dr. Amy Foster. All 3 humans looked calm and determined. Members of the Galactic Council, Walsh began. We know what you really are. We know your history. We know about the species you've destroyed and the worlds you've conquered. Chancellor Mordak's energy form brightened with anger. You know, nothing human. The Council has brought peace to the galaxy for 1,000 years. Peace through conquest isn't peace, Dr. Foster replied. It's oppression, and oppression always ends the same way. Walsh continued his address. We're broadcasting this message throughout the galaxy. Every species under Council control will learn the truth about their situation. Every conquered world will understand they have a choice. You have 1 galactic standard year to begin dismantling your empire, Admiral Morrison added. Release the conquered species, return their worlds. Allow them to choose their own governments. Ambassador Veltar's crystal form flickered rapidly. And if we refuse? Jake Morrison's smile was cold as space itself. Then we'll dismantle it. For you. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. No species had ever dared threaten the Council directly. The very concept was unthinkable. But within hours, reports proved the humans weren't bluffing. Operation Last Stand began with simultaneous attacks across Council space. Human ships that had been hiding for months suddenly revealed themselves. Strike forces emerged from asteroid fields, nebulae, and empty space. Captain Sue Barnes led the assault on the Zephyrian homeworld. Her task force included ships crewed by volunteers from every human colony. They knew they might never see Earth again, but they had volunteered anyway. The Zephyrian defense fleet was impressive on paper. 50 capital ships, hundreds of fighters, orbital weapons platforms that could destroy continents. But they had never faced human tactics before. Sue's ships didn't attack the defenses directly. Instead, they broadcast surrender demands to individual Zephyrian ships. Not surrender to humanity, but surrender to their own enslaved populations. Zephyrian vessels, Sue announced on all frequencies. "Your empire is built on the bones of conquered species. Your people deserve better than to die for your leader's crimes." To everyone's surprise, 3 Zephyrian ships immediately stopped fighting. Their crews had been contacted by human intelligence operatives months earlier. They knew the truth about their government's history. Commander Nick Turner's squadron attacked the Vorthan Imperial fleet at their home system. But the real battle wasn't in space. It was in the information networks that connected Vorthon society. Human hackers had infiltrated every major communication system in Council space. As the battle raged overhead, Vorthon citizens watched footage of their empire's crimes. They saw records of genocide, slavery, and oppression that their leaders had hidden for centuries. By the time Nick's ships had disabled the Imperial fleet, half the Vorthan homeworld was in rebellion against their own government. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. Humans didn't just attack military targets. They attacked the lies that held the Council together. Species that had been told they were partners learned they were prisoners. Worlds that believed they had joined willingly discovered they had been conquered. But the decisive battle took place at Nexus Prime, the artificial world that served as the Council's administrative center. Dr. Foster had discovered that the entire Council hierarchy depended on a quantum communication network based there. Destroy it, and their ability to coordinate across the galaxy would collapse. The assault fleet that approached Nexus Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't led by Admiral Morrison or General Parker. Instead, it was commanded by Maria Santos, a former school principal who had lost her son in an early Council attack. Maria's fleet consisted of converted passenger ships, cargo haulers, and civilian vessels. The crews were teachers, engineers, farmers, and artists. They were ordinary people who had volunteered for an extraordinary mission. "This is Principal Santos to all ships," she announced as they approached the heavily defended world. "Remember why we're here. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but for freedom. For every species that was told they had no choice." The Battle of Nexus Prime lasted 6 hours. Council defense forces fought desperately to protect their command center, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer number of human ships. For every vessel they destroyed, 2 more took its place. The civilians fought with a determination that shocked the professional soldiers defending the world. They weren't trained warriors, but they were fighting for something the Council couldn't understand. They were fighting for the right to say no. When the quantum communication network was finally destroyed, the effect was immediate. Across the galaxy, Council forces lost contact with their commanders. Coordination collapsed. Local commanders began surrendering rather than fight alone. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the reports coming in from his flagship. The 1,000-year-old Galactic Council was falling apart in real time. But his final log entry reflected the true meaning of humanity's victory. "They expected us to be grateful for their scraps," he recorded. "They wanted us to bow and accept their dominance. They never understood that some things can't be negotiated. Freedom isn't a gift to be given. It's a right to be taken." 5 years later, the galaxy had transformed completely. Ambassador Lisa Parker, promoted from her general position, addressed the first Galactic Assembly of Free Worlds. Representatives from over 300 species attended, including former council members who had rebuilt their civilizations as democratic republics. The old patterns of dominance and subjugation were broken. Trade flowed freely between worlds. Technology was shared openly. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than force. Humanity didn't rule this new galaxy. They had done something far more revolutionary. They had taught it to rule itself. The final scene took place aboard the orbital station New Geneva, where everything had started. Captain Bobby Clark, Jake Morrison's successor, received a message from an unknown alien vessel approaching human space. The newcomers weren't conquerors offering scraps. They were explorers seeking partnership. Their message spoke of mutual respect, fair trade, and shared exploration of the galaxy's remaining mysteries. Bobby reviewed their communication with interest. After 5 years of freedom, the galaxy had learned new ways of making contact. His response set the tone for humanity's future among the stars. "Welcome to the neighborhood. We've got a lot to discuss." Dr. Foster, now Earth's leading expert on interspecies relations, watched the alien ship dock with the station. Her final observation captured the change that had swept across the galaxy. "Turns out the galaxy didn't need rulers," she said quietly. "It just needed someone willing to say no to them." The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of galactic freedom had begun, and it had all started with one simple word that changed everything: no.